I heard them laughing before I saw what they were planning. Standing in the hallway outside the dining room, gift box in hand, I listened to my family rehearse the Christmas skit they'd written about me. The mechanic daughter. The one with oil under her nails. The family embarrassment they'd turned into entertainment. My mom was practicing her lines. My dad was perfecting the timing. My brother and sister were laughing at all the right moments. And then my father said it, casual as anything, "We'll read the will afterward. It'll land better that way." That's when I realized this wasn't just a joke. This was a message. So I sent them one back. And trust me, they got it loud and clear. Let me back up, because this story doesn't start at Christmas. It starts years earlier, in the Callahan house in Plano, Texas, where everything looked perfect from the outside. Symmetrical picture frames. Polished hardwood floors. Soft gold lighting that made every corner Instagram ready. My sister Blair made sure of that. She was a part-time dental hygienist and full-time lifestyle content creator, always angling for the perfect shot. But nothing in that house ever landed softly, especially not the truth. I was 18 when I told my family I wanted to study automotive engineering. I remember the exact moment. We were in the kitchen. Something buttery was cooking. My mom was always cooking something that smelled expensive. My father, Warren Callahan, owned a chain of upscale furniture stores, the kind where a single couch costs more than most people's cars. He was setting the table when I said it. He dropped the metal serving spoon. The clang echoed through the kitchen harder than it should have. My mother, Delilah, the woman who coordinated charity galas and kept our family's image ironed flat, just blinked at me. Slowly. Like her brain was buffering. My older brother Matthew, a medical resident at the time and the family's golden standard, lowered his eyes to hide a smirk. My younger sister Blair laughed outright. Quick and sharp. The spoon was still wobbling on the tile floor. I bent down to pick it up, my fingers brushing the cool metal. I left a faint smear of oil on it from the spark plug I'd been working on earlier that afternoon. No one said it out loud. But the silence filled in the sentence for them. That's not what our family does. After that day, the pattern settled in like weather you can't escape. My mom would slide job listings across the kitchen counter. Office assistant. Receptionist. She never looked directly at me when she said, "This would be more stable." Then she gestured vaguely toward my hands, at the faint lines of grease that never quite washed out. Especially when you're around people. Matthew, whenever he visited home, would pat my shoulder with a doctor's practice sympathy. "Just be careful with all that physical work," he'd say, like I was one accident away from proving his point. Blair recorded her lifestyle videos in our living room, the ring light illuminating her perfectly styled hair while she talked about finding balance and elegance. When I'd walk past the camera, she'd wrinkle her nose for her audience. "Oil fumes again," she'd laugh. Her viewers filled the comments with little laughing emojis. I stayed quiet because that was the role I'd learned to play. My silence kept the house smooth. It kept their image intact. Every family gathering, cousins, church members, neighbors, I walked slower, kept my voice low, made sure my work boots didn't click too loudly on the floor. Quiet was safer. Quiet didn't get me pulled aside later for my tone, my posture, my presentation. There's one memory that stays with me. Small, but it stuck. I was standing at the sink washing dishes after dinner. Steam was rising around my hands. Behind me, my family was laughing at some joke I wasn't part of. I looked down at the water running over my hands, at the oil-stained crescent near my thumbnail that never quite came clean. That was the moment I learned what I was allowed to be in that house. And what I wasn't. But here's what they didn't know. What they never bothered to notice. While they were busy being embarrassed by me, I was building something. At 21, I opened my own garage with money I'd saved from working 3 jobs through college. Small at first, just me and one bay. But it grew. By 25, I had expanded to 3 locations across Dallas. Good mechanics are hard to find, and word spreads fast when you do honest work. My family never asked about it. Not once. They'd see me at holidays with grease still faintly visible under my nails and assume I was barely scraping by. Assume I was struggling. Assume I needed saving from myself. They had no idea I was doing better than fine. Fast forward to that December evening. I arrived at my parents' house early, carrying a wrapped box. Something small and neat, something I'd picked out after a long shift at the garage. The house glowed warm against the winter dusk, the kind of glow that made the Callahan house look welcoming from the street. Even when it wasn't. I stepped inside quietly. My mom was somewhere deeper in the house, rehearsing the Christmas program she coordinated for our church every year. My father's voice floated down the hallway, steady and practiced. I followed the sound, passing the framed photos where Matthew was always centered, the family's model child. Blair always had the best lighting, of course. When I reached the dining room, I noticed the door wasn't fully closed. A narrow strip of golden light cut across the dark hallway floor. I didn't mean to stop. But then I heard my name. Saige, my mom said, like she was trying it out for a joke. Laughter followed. Then my father's voice, low but clear, "She'll wear the jumpsuit, right? The blue one. It fits the theme." Matthew chuckled, that same soft, polite laugh he used with patience. "The toy car will get a reaction." And the line about oil stains, Blair added. "Perfect. The church will love it." There was a rustle of paper. Someone rehearsing a script. Someone else fixing the timing. It took me a second to realize what they were doing. A skit. A Christmas skit about me. About my job. About the grease under my nails. About how I didn't fit the Callahan family image. And then my father said it, like the punchline of a long-planned joke. "We'll read the will afterward. It'll land better that way." The words hit me differently than the rest. The will. They were going to perform this humiliation in front of the entire church, in front of relatives and family friends, and then read my grandfather's will. The will that left me out entirely because, according to my grandmother's letter I'd found years ago, I'd chosen a path unbecoming of the Callahan name. They were going to make sure everyone knew. Make sure everyone laughed first, so the exclusion would seem justified. Deserved, even. I felt the box in my hands grow heavier. The wrapping paper bent slightly under my grip. The hallway suddenly felt colder than the night outside. No one inside that room paused. No one sensed me standing there in the dark, listening. I backed away slowly, keeping my boots silent on the tile. The box pressed close to my chest. By the time I stepped outside, the truth sat clean and sharp in my mind. I had just overheard my family's plan to humiliate me at Christmas. The cold hit me when I stepped onto the porch. Not sharp, just dull and heavy, the kind that sinks through layers. I stood there for a moment, still holding that gift box. The wrapping paper was crushed now from how tightly I'd gripped it. Inside the house, the laughter continued, muffled but still bright. Still rehearsed. I set the box down on the wooden bench by the door. Brushed my thumb over the corner once. Then I walked to my truck. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just drove. The neighborhood lights blurred as I turned toward the highway. My phone buzzed twice, texts from my mom's event group chat, probably. I ignored them. The only place open at that hour was a 24/7 gas station off the main road. Neon lights buzzing, pavement slick with a thin layer of frost. I pulled into a corner spot, turned off the engine, and let the silence settle. My hands rested on the steering wheel. The faint smell of motor oil rose from the microfiber cloth tucked in my jacket pocket. That cloth had followed me through years of late-night shifts at the garage, emergency call-ins, long drives home. For the first time, I was grateful for its smell. It grounded me. I reached for my phone and called Nayeli Jones. My closest friend. My CPA. Nayeli had been with me since I opened the garage at 21. She knew my family's patterns. She understood the silence I'd carried into adulthood. More than that, she'd been there the day I signed the papers on my first investment property, a small industrial lot I'd bought with money my family didn't know I had. When she answered, her voice was steady like always. "You okay?" I didn't answer that. Instead, I said, "Can you check the lease folder for the LLC?" My voice surprised even me. Flat. Steady. Almost businesslike. There was a pause as Nayeli clicked through her files. I watched the neon lights flicker on the wet concrete outside. Okay, she said. Got it. Why? Just open it. I heard her scrolling, then stopping, then scrolling again. Saige, are you sitting down? I'm in my truck. You need to look at this. Right now. I opened the folder on my own phone, something I rarely did after hours. The document list appeared. Payments. Lease agreements. Notices. Ownership forms. My stomach tightened. I clicked on the lease for the commercial property in Plano. The property my father's flagship furniture showroom was housed in. The one he bragged about every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every fundraiser. The pride of Warren Callahan. The tenant name blinked back at me. His LLC. The landlord name blinked back at me too. Mine. Not my personal name. My real estate LLC. The one Nayeli helped me set up when I was 25. The one I'd used to invest in small industrial lots around Dallas. I knew I owned the property. Of course I did. But I had never connected it emotionally to them. Not until that moment. I scrolled further. Payment logs. 3 missed payments. A pending increase in market rent, significant. A clause about non-renewal that I'd highlighted months ago when Nayeli told me the market was shifting. At the time, it felt like professional due diligence. Now it felt like something else entirely. They're using your property, Nayeli said quietly. And they're behind. I leaned back against the seat. The neon light buzzed overhead, rhythmic and cold. For a long moment, I didn't speak. I just let the information settle. Not like a revelation, more like a slow, inevitable truth finally reaching the surface. What do you want to do? Nayeli asked. I stared at the lease. At the rent calculations Nayeli had written in the margins months ago. At the notices I hadn't sent yet. At the folder of templated documents waiting for me to fill them out. The answer came easier than I expected. Everything by the book. Okay, she said, already shifting into work mode. Then let's start. I set my phone on the dashboard mount and opened the laptop I kept in the back seat for late-night paperwork. The screen cast a pale light across the truck's interior, catching the tiny scratches on the steering wheel, the dust on my boots, the faint oil stains on my nails. Nayeli talked me through each step. I opened spreadsheets, checked payments, calculated overdue amounts, cross-referenced lease clauses, prepared a notice of default, prepared a notice of non-renewal, updated the market rate increase based on the latest comps, linked ownership verification documents, drafted the cover letter for courier delivery. Each step had weight. Not emotional weight, procedural. Clean. Controlled. A kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years. At one point, Nayeli said, if they planned a Christmas lesson for you, this is just your gift in return. I didn't laugh. I didn't even smile. My fingers paused above the keyboard. It's not a gift, I said. It's a line. She understood. When the packet was ready, signed, timestamped, uploaded, I sat still for a full minute. The station was nearly empty. A distant truck hummed as it passed on the highway. Somewhere behind me, a vending machine whirred to life. I pressed send to the courier. Same-day delivery. Christmas Eve arrival, 6:30 sharp. The confirmation pinged softly. I closed the laptop, wiped my hands on the cloth in my pocket, and looked out at the dark highway stretching ahead. This time, I said into the quiet, I won't fix what they've broken. Christmas Eve at the church always looked the same. Soft lights. Poinsettias lining the stage. The camera crew setting up like the Callahan family were part of the program itself. My mother, Delilah, thrived there. She moved through the hall adjusting garlands, nodding at volunteers, perfecting what she called the atmosphere of generosity. I wasn't there. But my absence didn't register at first. Inside the banquet room, early arriving relatives were settling in. My father, Warren, was rehearsing lines for his short speech. Matthew, the celebrated older brother, adjusted his tie in a mirrored pillar. Blair checked her phone's front camera every few minutes, smoothing her hair between takes. The courier arrived at 6:47. He slipped through the decorated hallway, past a children's choir practicing carols. He carried a stack of envelopes, white, clean, official. He asked for Saige Callahan by name. She smiled, assuming they were last-minute donations or RSVPs. When she tore open the first envelope, the expression on her face broke cleanly. First confusion. Then a small, precise shock, like a light bulb flickering before it burns out. The pages inside slid neatly onto the table under the bright lights. Notice of default. Notice of non-renewal. Revised market rent. Payment ledgers. Ownership records listing landlord, Saige Callahan. Her hand trembled. Paper rustled as she flipped pages too quickly. Warren stepped closer. What is that? Delilah didn't answer. Matthew took one page to read. His jaw tightened. Mom, this is the showroom lease. Blair leaned over his shoulder, eyes widening. Wait. Saige owns the building? The pastor, standing at the doorway, quietly stopped giving instructions to the camera crew. Someone dimmed the stage lights. Even the murmurs from the children's choir seemed to fade. One of my aunts whispered, "Why would Saige send this tonight?" Delilah's voice finally returned, thin, unsteady. No. This has to be a mistake. She wouldn't. She doesn't. But the bottom of the ownership record still read the same. Landlord, Saige Callahan. Not her mechanic daughter. Not her silent daughter. Not her invisible daughter. Not the one she tried to turn into a seasonal joke. My father's face went from confused to pale in the span of seconds. He grabbed the payment ledger, his finger tracing down the columns. 3 months behind. Late fees accumulating. A notice that had been sent to his business email, the one he never checked because his assistant handled minor administrative tasks. This wasn't minor anymore. At 7:02, my father tried calling me. When I didn't answer, Delilah grabbed her phone. Her earrings shook with the force of her movement. She stepped out of the banquet room, pressing the phone hard against her ear. The first call went to voicemail. The second too. On the third, I answered. I was standing outside a cabin in Colorado. Snow drifting across the porch. I could hear her breath before her voice, ragged, thin, frantic. Where are you? She demanded. Behind her, I could hear chairs scraping. Relatives whispering. The distant edge of someone crying. She wasn't asking because she cared. She was asking because her perfect program had cracked, and she needed me to help her seal the edges before anyone else noticed. The snow collected along the railing as I watched flakes settle on my gloves. Nayeli was inside chopping vegetables, humming softly. The cabin was warm, but the cold air felt cleaner. I didn't answer her question. Instead, I said slowly, evenly, "Did you enjoy my gift?" The silence on her end wasn't dramatic. It was worse. Small. Stunned. Collapsing inward. A silence that recognized, maybe for the first time, that I had stopped orbiting them. Saige, she tried again, softer now, almost pleading. We can talk about this. Whatever you think you heard. I didn't think I heard anything, Mom. I heard exactly what you were planning. The jumpsuit. The toy car. The oil stains joke. The will reading afterward. All of it. Her breath caught. Sharp and sudden. You were going to humiliate me in front of the entire church, I continued, my voice steady. Make me the punchline so everyone would understand why I didn't matter enough to include in Grandpa's will. You rehearsed it like a show. That's not, we were just, it was supposed to be lighthearted. No, I said. It was supposed to remind me of my place. And it worked. Just not the way you planned. The wind shifted, and her voice thinned out into static. I won't discuss this tonight, I said. All communication can go through the LLC inbox. The contact information is on the letterhead. You can't. I already did. I let the silence sit for a moment. Not as punishment. Just as distance, finally measured. Then I hung up. The snow kept falling. The phone stayed still in my hand. Inside the cabin, Nayeli set another log on the fire. And for the first time in years, I felt nothing pulling me back toward Plano. The morning after Christmas, the cabin was quiet in a way the Callahan house had never been. No stage decorations. No curated lighting. No soft, rehearsed laughter leaking through doorways. Just the sound of wind threading through the pines and the soft crackle of the fireplace Nayeli had started before sunrise. I sat on the small porch with a mug warming my hands. The snow had fallen heavily overnight, burying the steps in a smooth, unbroken sheet of white. My boots left the first marks when I stepped out there, each print sinking cleanly into the surface. Inside, Nayeli moved around the kitchen. Her presence steady and unobtrusive. She didn't ask about the call or the documents or the fallout. She knew better than anyone that silence could be a kind of shelter. I checked my email only once. A message from Warren sat at the top. My father. Short. No greeting. No scolding. Just logistics about transferring operations. Points of contact. Payment timelines. Professional. Measured. The kind of email he would send a vendor. Or a landlord. For the first time, he was speaking to me in the role I had built for myself. I replied in the same tone. Short. Clean. Boundaried. Then I closed the inbox. The rest of the morning passed in small movements. I swept snow from the railing. Brought in firewood. Tightened a loose hinge on the cabin door. It felt good to fix something where the repair didn't cost me pieces of myself. When the sun rose higher, the light shifted across the clearing, catching on the thin crescent of oil still stained on my thumbnail. Still there from the night I'd left the house. In Plano, it had been the punchline. Out here, it was just a mark of the work I'd chosen. I stayed on the porch until the cold pressed gently at my fingertips and the air steadied in my lungs. There was no rush to return. No expectation to meet. No version of myself I had to shrink into. Just the snow. Just the quiet. Just the space to finally breathe. Boundaries aren't punishment. They're the quiet shape of what you refuse to carry anymore. Standing on that porch, watching the snow erase every footprint behind me, I understood something simple. Distance can be a form of respect. Both given and taken. My family had spent years treating me like I didn't fit. Like my work wasn't real. Like my choices made me less than them. They'd planned to turn me into entertainment. A joke in a jumpsuit with a toy car. A punchline about oil stains. A lesson about staying in your place. Instead, they got a lesson about underestimating the quiet one. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because I was done being invisible in my own family. Done being the punchline. Done shrinking myself to fit their image. The documents I sent weren't cruel. They were clear. Professional. Legal. Everything by the book, just like Nayeli said. But they carried a message my family couldn't ignore. I see you. And I won't be erased. I don't know what happened at that Christmas program after I hung up. I don't know if they went through with the skit or if they canceled it. I don't know if anyone else found out what they'd planned. And honestly, I don't need to know. Because for the first time in my life, their story isn't mine to carry. What I do know is this: my father's emails stayed professional. My mother stopped calling. Matthew sent one text, short, polite, distant. Blair unfollowed me on social media, which felt about right. The lease situation got handled through lawyers and accountants, exactly how it should have been from the start. They found a new location. Smaller, less central, but functional. I didn't block the move. I just didn't make it easy either. And me? I stayed in Colorado for another week. Nayeli and I hiked through snow-covered trails, cooked meals that took too long, and sat by the fire without needing to fill the silence with anything but the crackling wood. When I finally drove back to Texas, it wasn't to Plano. It was to my garage. To my work. To the life I'd built on my own terms. The oil stains on my hands didn't wash out any better than before. But I stopped trying to hide them. Thanks for listening. And if you liked this story, give it a thumbs up, and and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment sharing your own thoughts about family expectations, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about standing up, setting boundaries, and refusing to be anyone's punchline. Sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the permission to stop carrying what was never yours to hold.